Years ago, there was a guy who came up to me. He lives around here, and he'd been here his whole life. His name is Eric, and he goes to work in the city at a factory, and he comes out where we live, very rural, and he lives here with his family. And he came out to me years ago, and he said, Zach, most people who move out here don't make it. They don't make it. And you can usually tell within a certain amount of time, and he suggested 6 years. If you can make it the first 6 years, you're going to make it. But usually, a lot of people, most people, will give up within that time period. And so that was when we first moved out here. I met Eric, and he sat me down and told me this. And as I have observed, excuse me, as I have observed, he's right. Over the years, I have observed he's right. There are people who move out to where I am or other locations that I've heard about. Listen, I'm in the homesteading community. I hear about people all the time, not just in my area, but in other areas. And they move out to a place that's very rural, okay, and they give it a go, and a lot of times they give up and they move back. Now, as I've observed this throughout the years, I'm attributing their failures, for the most part, not in all cases, but for the most part, to one thing. In my talks, in the recent conference I've done and other conferences I've spoke at before, I've always said a spouse needs to be on par with her spouse. A married couple has to be on the same page when it comes to homesteading, because you're going to put your marriage through stresses and things like that it's going to test your marriage. And I often refer back to that PBS series called Frontier House. And in that Frontier House, you can watch it I think on the internet. It's free. I think you can watch it in most places. It may even be on YouTube. I'm not sure. But in that series, you had a number of couples that go off-grid in Montana to prepare for winter, and it's only a 3-month time frame. It was so stressful that all of the couples after the series got a divorce. And so you have to be on the same page. You have to want it as bad as the other person. You have to see what's going on and say, I have to get this fixed. I have to prepare. There's a reason why we're doing this, and we're going to do this together and weather that storm. Now, some of these things can be stressors, but the thing that I am going to attribute to most of these failures is one thing, not always, but one thing called cultural anthropomorphism. Cultural anthropomorphism. What is anthropomorphism? And I say cultural because it's ingrained in the culture that we have today. Anthropomorphism is attributing human characteristics to animals. Human characteristics to animals. And the number one entity that is guilty of doing this to our culture, thus being cultural anthropomorphism, is Disney. It's not just Disney, but is Disney. You have, not just Disney, meaning, like when I was young, I was raised on Big Bird, on Sesame Street. People who are older than me, Mr. Ed. You have all these examples throughout all of your childhood and adulthood and growing up of cultural anthropomorphism. You've attributed human characteristics to animals. And what is the number one thing that I see these homesteaders failing for? I can't just bring myself to butcher my chickens. They're my pets. I can't eat them. And so what do you have? You have a bunch of roosters fighting all the time for a number of hens, and they roost up in the tree. No one takes care of their animals anymore. And then you have animals who get sick, like cows who pass away. A cow gets sick, gets bloat and dies, and they just can't handle that their beloved cow died. And they have to butcher these sheep or butcher a goat, and they can't handle it. Or, what's even worse, a predator comes around and kills some of your sheep, and you go out and you find that slaughtered dead body of the animal that you were just petting yesterday. It's too hard for them. They can't take it. I see it over and over again. It's cultural anthropomorphism. You have put human characteristics on animals for so long that you think that they're human. You think that they're family, without understanding that our culture, all throughout human history, relied on these animals for food and for clothing, for medicine sometimes, for so many things. And now they have personalities that this is the number one killer of homesteads. This is the number one killer. I have seen it over and over again. Years back, there was a couple who moved out to a homestead. and they had 2 teenage daughters. And again, it's like the Matrix. If you're too old, unplugging yourself from the Matrix, it can be very hard for some people. And they had 2 teenage daughters, and they moved out here. The wife was a vegetarian, already on the wrong, starting off on the wrong road. Okay, and they're gonna have homestead, and they had animals, and so the daughters and the family just could not handle the fact of butchering these. I think it was sheep or goats. I'm not sure what they had. They could not handle it, and within a couple of years, they were gone, moved back to the city. And I have seen this over and over. We had another couple in the area, and the dog that they had for their homestead was attacking some of their kids. It was turning on the children, and just, it was probably, maybe it got sick or something, who knows. But they could not deal with the fact that this was happening, and they had to ask a neighbor to come and put it down. They couldn't do it themselves. You bite my kid, it's over. Like before the minute's over. That's it. And it's like, you can't bring yourself to do this. You're not cut from the same cloth that our ancestors have been cut from. You are in a sad position. And it's like, I don't know how you're going to survive what's coming. If you can't handle that, how are you going to survive what is coming? But I've seen it over and over and over again. We have been raised in a society that is inundated with cultural anthropomorphism. It's a sickness. It's a disease. And it's made all of us weak. I mean, Winnie the Pooh. Who doesn't get drawn in by Winnie the Pooh? Even government. Smokey the Bear. It draws you in. It skewers your mind with fallacies. You need a rewiring. You definitely need a rewiring. And if you can't do that, you're not going to make it homesteading. So yeah, I agree. You got about 6 years. You come out here, if you can make it. There's been people out here who I was like, oh, there's no way you're going to make it. And they didn't. And there was people who moved out here like, oh, there's no way you're going to make it. And they pushed through and they made it. They're here. They've been here longer than 6 years. But there are some people I've had, it's like, it's tough. It's rough. It's hard for some people. But the reason it's hard is because society has infected your mind with a sickness of comfort and lies. And it's hard for a lot of people to get past that. I hope that makes sense. What is your experience? Have you seen this as well? Have you seen people struggling with this? Because in even YouTube channels, I have seen YouTube channels come online and they go hard at it and they're building buildings and they're getting animals and they're putting in fencing and they're putting in gardens. And then within a couple years, out they go. I don't hear from them anymore. And these are, I don't know them. I'm just saying, I've watched channels and they just go dark. And I hear later, about some of them I hear back later that they couldn't handle it. It was too hard and they moved back to the city, and it is what it is. And I tell you, it's harder when 2 spouses are not on the same page. It's harder when you bring teenagers out to a place like this because we're 30 minutes away from the nearest gas station and we're an hour away from the nearest real restaurant or, major grocery store chains or things like that. Unless you want to go to a Walmart. But we're out here. There's no real cell coverage out here. It's getting better. This has mostly been dirt road territory for a long time, and they just paved a section, out where we live, not too far away. And a lot of people were unhappy about that because we like the rural area. We like it. It keeps the dirt roads. I've had people show up at my homestead crying at numerous occasions because of the dirt roads stressed them out so much. I'm not kidding you. They showed up crying many times. I have many people who have showed up in my homestead when they come out here sometimes, for this or that, and they're crying because the dirt road stressed them out so much. I'm not laughing at you. I'm just saying that it's hard. I understand why it's hard. I didn't know why Eric came to me years ago and said, Zach, most people don't make it. And here's the time frame of when you can see it. Hey, they're either going to make it or they're not. And it's true. What he said was true. He is a great observer of human personality and human characteristics. And he was right. And now I have observed it. And I'm giving you the main reason why I think it's happening. But there's other reasons too, just like, the dirt road and other stuff. It's hard. But the way you make it, and I talked about this at the last conference I was at, you got to be on the same page with your spouse. Your kids need to understand and be focused on why you're making this choice. Hard times are coming. And if you can't get past the idea of putting a dog down that's biting your children, or understand that raccoons will eat your chickens and you need to make your chicken coop like Fort Knox, or that sometimes, yes, cows get sick and they pass away, and these things happen. If you can't get past that and grow some hardness because of those things, then it's going to be tough for you. What's your experience? Please leave a comment below. Am I off base? Have you seen other things that have caused people just to give up? Have you seen people who have pushed through? Have you been one of the people who have pushed through? Leave a comment below. Try to leave encouragement, because it could be your encouragement to help someone else just get that extra day in. Sometimes people are just doing day to day. It's hard. I know it's hard. I've been there. I've been there. I know the blood, sweat, and tears. So leave some encouragement below. Someone may need to read it today. All right, guys. Hey, check out our merchandise, teespring.com. You can find our best-selling shirt, Stupid Should Hurt. If we had more hurt in this world, there'd be an awful lot less stupid. And because we have so little hurt, we have a lot of stupid. Check out our shirt. You can find that. Anytime you wear that out in public, it's going to be a conversation starter. I promise you that. All right. See you next time in the Homestead. Bye.
Alexander the Great. Did you know when he died, his body was placed in a coffin made of solid gold? Decades later, Ptolemy X and Cleopatra III stole the coffin and gold artifacts just so they could pay their war debts. Germany, at the time of World War II, stole all of the gold they could get their hands on, and much of it still today has not yet been accounted for. You see, all throughout history, when times get tough, people, either good or bad, seek real wealth. They turn to gold and silver. The central banks and Wall Street cheerleaders would have you believe that gold and silver are just shiny rocks with no real value. But did you know that central banks around the world have for the last year been buying record amounts of gold and silver for stockpiling? Stockpiling for what? What do they know that they're not telling us? Genesis Gold Group is a proud supporter of an American homestead. They help people get out of locked-in 401ks and IRAs into something that's real, physical gold and silver. If you're going to be locked into something, it might be a good idea to talk to Genesis Gold Group about being locked into something physically vaulted instead of just a piece of paper that at the end of the day is just that, a piece of paper. It's a clear surety that our economy is headed for turbulent waters. The nation is currently over $31 trillion in debt, and Congress keeps spending money and the Fed keeps printing it. That does not bode well for anyone keeping and saving money in savings accounts or paper-denominated assets. Call Genesis Gold Group today, this instant, or visit them online at genesisgoldgroup.com. They can put together a strategy that's right for you. And be sure to say that you heard about them from an American homestead.
Hey guys, did you know you can become a patron of an American homestead? They get access to private videos, and we send them gifts from the homestead that we make here on the homestead. And we also enter our patrons into special giveaways that are only available to them. And before you go, please check out these other great videos. Go ahead, click. I'll wait.